Hi, I'm Karima Brown. It's Sunday and it's time for The Fix. Welcome to this edition of The Fix, where every Sunday we hold the decision makers to account. We tell you why it matters, how it affects you, and why you should care. Now, the battle to beat back Covid-19 is in full swing following President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to declare it a national state of disaster. Moreover, stringent restrictions of movement have been introduced, as well as tight regulations and other mechanisms to deal with the devastating consequences of the virus. Joining me on The Fix this morning to unpack the issues, particularly as it relates to the economy and the labour market, is the Director General of Employment, Thobile Lamati. He's standing in for Thulas Nesi, who couldn't be here with us this morning. Then we've also got COSATU General Secretary Bheki Ntshalintshali and the Head of Business Unity South Africa, Mr. Sipho Pityana. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Good morning and hello to you in life under the virus in times of corona. Before I speak with you, let's just listen quickly to the leader of the official opposition, Mr. John Steenhuisen, when he spoke during a consultation with President Ramaphosa, calling on all parties to work together to fight this virus.
I would like to make an appeal in two aspects to South Africans, to the private sector and big business, particularly, to get involved in the effort. This is going to require the best efforts of all South Africans to come together to fight this virus and the effects on our economy. It's not a time for anyone to be sitting back on their hands. The second appeal I'd like to make is to our fellow citizens out there to stop the panic buying. It is not necessary. We can beat this virus and we can get through this, but it's going to require all of us to be calm but deliberative in our approach. And I think if we can get that right, we're going to get through this. But we need to stop the panic buying and, most importantly, stop the fake news. Let's rely on credible news sources, that we're sharing credible information with people.
That is, of course, Mr. Steenhuisen from the Democratic Alliance, gentlemen, demonstrating there the unity that has been displayed from the political leaders. And, of course, you are yourselves important players in the social compact. We've got Mr. Bheki Ntshalintshali, the Secretary General of COSATU, and, of course, also Mr. Pityana from Busa, and an all-important stakeholder, the Department of Labour, of Employment, that needs to make sure that both labour and business comply. So let me start off with you, Director General. What are you doing in terms of ensuring that businesses comply with the health and safety, and particularly occupational health and safety regulations? And more importantly, what are the penalties for those businesses who are not complying, given what government has laid out?
Good morning, Karima. Immediately after the President announced the state of the national disaster, we issued guidelines that are accessible from our website, www.labor.gov.za. Those guidelines, what they are saying is similar to what is contained in the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the hazardous biological agents. Remember, currently we don't have a vaccine for the pandemic, so what we need to rely on at workplaces are the safe work practices and instances where employers can apply engineering controls to control the risk or exposure of workers to the virus, and also the Department of Health has issued administrative controls that must be adhered to. And in that guideline, we're also echoing those administrative controls. But lastly, the issuing of personal protective equipment to the workers, especially those that are coming into contact with the public. So those are the guidelines that we've issued. We would like to appeal to employers to religiously adhere to those guidelines and other guidelines that have been issued by the Department of Health. So the failure to comply with those guidelines, we apply the same penalties that are provided for in the occupational health and safety legislation.
And just remind our viewers, what are those penalties if a business doesn't comply, as is the case in some instances? What is it that the department can do?
What the department can do is to write a report and send it to the Office of the Public Prosecution, recommending prosecution for various transgressions of the Occupational Health and Safety Act or whichever regulation that will be applicable.
All right, let me bring in...
And it's then up to...
Let me bring in Busa. I'll come back to you, DG. Mr. Pityana, the track record of businesses isn't always good when it comes to providing or complying with regulations. This is, of course, a global pandemic. One would expect businesses to be responsible. From Busa's side, what are you doing to enforce compliance on the side of employers, especially those in the frontline services like your police, like your, retail workers that have in fact become heroes in many cases, keeping the stocked shelves for food during times like this? What are you saying to your members?
Well, first of all, Karima, let me say that we've communicated and made clear to government, and we've spoken to the president directly to indicate businesses' full support for the measures introduced by the president, and that we do all we can to make sure that we come to the party. Since then, we have are focusing on three key areas. The first is to ensure that every aspect of business, particularly the health sector, is in line to collaborate with government efforts, but also that there's public health initiatives by companies to make sure that we educate our employees and members of the public that we interact with about the measures that need to be taken to make sure that we are preventative and stem the tide. The second focus is looking at the impact on the economy to make sure that sustainability of the economy is protected. The third aspect is a social dimension, which includes labor market aspects. Of course, the restructuring and the announcements that have been made are going to have quite significant impact on the labor market dimension. So those three areas are what we are focusing our engagement on with our social partners. In NADLAC, we had a meeting and we're focusing on these areas. We have various work streams that are looking at this, and I have to tell you that this has seized the moment. Everybody in business across the line is keen to make sure that the effort that has been introduced by government is successful, because this is a threat to the nation. So far from enforcement, there is eagerness to make sure that the measures are in place. I've seen steps taken across the board by major players. Our biggest concern is those small businesses that don't have capacity. And
Mr. Pityana, we're going to come back to that. We're going to speak specifically about that. I just want to check with the General Secretary of COSATU. You've got the government regulations. You've got an in-principle commitment from business. Bheki and Ntshalintshali, your members are on the shop floors in those very areas. Are they complying? Are employers complying? What is the experience of your members in real terms?
Thank you very much, and good morning to all the panelists. I think the first thing that we want just to raise from what Pityana has raised to educate the employees. I think the first step they should do is to educate the employers so that they fully understand the impact, so that they themselves can be in the same spot as what needs to be done before even they go to the employees. We've seen that some of the employers, I'm not talking about the good ones, just talking about the negative one, that workers are equally exposed. They're not providing what is in the guidelines, the gloves. I'll make one example where people are really, really exposed. If you look to the toll gates and you look to the number of exchange of hands and cards and money. And you see some of the workers there really exposed as we pass it through. So it gets a sense that if we're not going to take these things as kind of an investment, but look at it as a cost, in other words, you don't want to provide the necessary gloves, necessary sanitation, because you regard it as a cost. I think we're going to be starting in the wrong foot. But of course, at the national level, between ourselves, government, and businesses, I think we're on the same, wavelength. We are great in almost everything that needs to be done.
Mr. Pityana, let me just come to you. On the question of, for example, just sick leave, right? We've got a lot of people with HIV. We've got a lot of people with TB. These are obviously people that are particularly at risk. How are employers going to be merciful and extend rights to those people should they fall ill or should they self-isolate, as the government has been calling? And what protection are firms going to offer to those people? Are you, for example, encouraging the companies to make lists of who their vulnerable people are, to make special efforts to protect them and to make sure that they are not going to lose their jobs in this process?
Well, the attitude that we are promoting is that there should be no threatening of people losing jobs as a result of taking measures to ensure their safety and protecting themselves. And I don't believe that there is an approach. I've seen communication and proposals that have come from different sectors of the economy, whether it's banking or mining or property and the rates business, etc., that is looking at what needs to be done. Of course, we can't be penny wise and be pound foolish here, because there isn't anything to be gained in anybody trying to think that they have to save in whatever way they can, and they can take and cut corners and take risks.
Absolutely. I just want to come in here.
Is to make sure that everybody is on side and they do what has to be done, and they support the government initiatives and make sure that everybody is a success of this campaign.
One of the things that you said at NEDLAC when you first met with government post the president declaring this virus a state of national disaster was the fact that you wanted stockpiling, particularly of ARVs and critical medicines, strategic medicines, through the release of supplementary procurement mechanisms that is urgently required. How far are you with that?
We are concerned about securing supply chains, and we raise those concerns to make sure that in the shutting down of borders and also shutting down of certain routes and all of that, we take particular care of to make sure that we don't shut ourselves out of critical medical supplies. Remember that there is a big concentration in Asia, in particularly in India and China, of the ingredients for some of the key and critical medicines. So we're focusing on those things. This is providing exemptions for certain measures that government has put in place to make sure adequacy of supply. We communicated, by the way, with the Minister of Trade and Industry and other ministers in respect of people being in a panic and trying to stockpile goods and services because they are anticipating that there are going to be shortages. Everything that we are hearing and feedback we're getting from our member in the Consumer Goods Council is that there isn't, in the foreseeable future, prospect of shortages of supply, and that there's no need for panic buying on the part of consumers for ordinary goods and services.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'm going to ask the DG of Employment specifically to talk about those workers who are vulnerable, particularly in sectors such as domestic work, farm work, and of course also casual labor. Don't go anywhere.